Hello guys, welcome to my today's video tutorial, and today I will be showing you how to calculate square roots manually or any root manually. So to understand the method of doing square roots manually, we need to understand powers, bases, laws of indices, etc, etc. So let's begin with our tutorial. So the first thing I said is this: square root. So square root is represented by a symbol like this. So this symbol means square root. But what does it actually mean? To understand its actual meaning, we need to understand first base and power. So what is base and power? So power and base are things like this. You see there is a number 2, and this number 2 has another number on its head, 2. So what this another number on his head is telling this number 2, that you multiply yourself twice. So this is the head number is telling to this base number, right? So that's why this one is called base. This one is called base, and this top thingy is called power. Power, right? So these are basically bases and powers. Now we have 6 laws for this, for calculating these indices, right? These powers are also called indices. So the first law is, when you are multiplying something with same base, when you are multiplying some values with same base, then all the powers, you can add all the powers up. So what does it mean? So the first law says, if you are, say, 2 to the power 4 multiplied by 2 to the power 6 multiplied by 2 to the power 8. Now see, the bases are same. The bases all are number 2, and the powers are different. In such case, you can add all the powers up like this: 4 plus 6 plus 8, and then you can write it 2 to the power 18. Now this is the first law of indices. What is the second law? The second law says, now if you are dividing two values with same base, then you can subtract the power of the numerator from the power of the denominator. It means 2 to the power 5, if we divide this value with 2 to the power 2, then we will get 2 to the power 5 minus 2 equals to 2 to the power 3, right? Now, what is the third law of indices? The third law of indices is, if you have a base and a power, and if you raise this power to another power like this, then all you need to do, multiply these two powers. So the actual power gets to be 10. 5 multiplied by 2. What is the fourth law of indices? So the fourth law of indices says, if you have a negative power, 2 to the power minus 1, it means you need to inverse this with its positive power. So if we have written 2 to the power minus 3, then it would have been 1 divided by 2 to the power 3. Right. Now, the fifth law. So the fifth law says, if you have um, 0 power to any base. So let's say 2 to the power 0. The value we'll get is 1. Or 2 to the power, sorry, not 2 to the power, let's say any base which has a power 0. 4 to the power 0, it will be 1. Even x to the power 0 will be 1. Why? Because it's a big question. A lot of people ask this question, that why anything which has the power 0 we get the value 1. So what it's actually saying is, you remember the second law, right? You remember the second law of indices, which says, what is the second law here? Which says, look, if you are dividing two values with same base, then we can simply subtract the powers, right? So what is actually 2 to the power 0 means? 2 to the power 0 means 2 to the power 1 divided by 2 to the power 1. So what do we get? We get 2 to the power 1 minus 1. But what do we get actually here? We can cross this 2 off and we get the value 1, right? So what is actually 2 to the power 0 means then? 2 to the power 0 means 1, no value at all, because you have divided everything with everything. Like you have divided the same number with the same number. So this is the fourth law of indices. Now, the fifth law of indices says, sorry, this is the fifth law. Sorry, this is the fifth law of indices. Now we will be discussing the last law, which is the sixth law of indices. Now in this law, we'll get the idea of root. So root is basically a fractional power. So anything which has a fractional power, so square root is basically 2 to the power half. This is a square root, and this symbol is a symbol of root. So what do we get if we have 2 to the power, not half, maybe 2 to the power 1 divided by 3, 1 by 3. So it will be a cubical root, cube root, right? So what happens? We have 2 to the power 5 by 2. So if we have a fractional power like this, 5 divided by 2, then the numerator will be the power raised and the denominator will be the root power. It means, so this 2 to the power 5 divided by 2 means root over 2 to the power 5. So we need to multiply root 2 5 times. So it simply means this. We need to multiply this root 2 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And eventually we'll get 1, 2. It will cross them off and we'll get a number 2. Root 2 will cross them off and we'll get a number 2. And then we'll be left with this root 2. So we'll get 4 root 2. Right. So this is the sixth law of indices, and this is how we get the idea of square root, right? So now you have gotten the idea of square root. Now let's calculate square root of a number. Like let's start with an easy number. Okay, so let me just get my pens. This one a bit, I want it a bit thicker. Yeah, 3. Okay, so let's take an easy number, 64. So we want to square root this 64. Now we know square root is a fractional power. So 64 is the base here and we have a power of half. Now if we can rearrange this 64 and if we can represent it as a multiplication of several same base values, then we can cross off its power, right? So what do I mean by that? I mean, let's do this, then you'll understand. So let's find the multiplication factor of 64. So 64 is an even number. So let's try dividing 64 with the smallest even number 2. What do we get? 3, 2, 32, 2, 16, 2, 8, 2, 4, 2, 2. This is we get, right? So how many 2's we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we multiply, we can write 64 as a 2 to the power 6. Why? Because if we multiply 2 6 times, then we get 64. So what is actually means, like if multiplying 2 6 times? Do you remember the laws of indices? If we are multiplying same base, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6 6. If we are multiplying same base values, what do we know? We know any base with power 1 is same, it will be same as the base value, right? So all these two have what power? 1. All these twos, they have a 1 on their heads, right? So look, the bases are same, 2 2 2 2 2. So we can add all this power on top of them. So what do we get? We get 2 to the power 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So we get 2 to the power 6. So if we represent 64 as 2 to the power 6, so what do we get? We get 2 to the power 6 divided by half. And what's the law of indices? If a base within power is raised to another power, then these two powers gets multiplied with each other. So it will be like 6 into half. This 2 and 6 will cross off and we'll have 3. So we'll get 2 to the power 3. What is 2 to the power 3? 2 to the power 3 is actually 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2, which is 2 multiplied by 2 is 4. 4 multiplied by 2 is 8. So this is the way of doing root calculations, and you can do any root calculations, like you can do square roots, you can do cubical roots. Let's do a cubical roots. Let's try to find out the cubical root of the same number 64. So what is this cubical root means? It means 64 has a power of 1 divided by 3, a fractional power, right? So how we wrote 64 earlier? Do you remember? We wrote 64 as 2 to the power 6, right? So this was 64. So now we'll get 6 divided by 3, so 2. We'll get 2 to the power 2 equals to 4. So the cubical root of 64 is 4. So this is the easy way of doing square root or any root of a number. So when you are doing like large numbers, let's say if you want to calculate the square root of say 125, just try to find out that same base, right? The same base value where you get the power 2, because you know that square root is actually a fractional power, which is half. So what you have to do, like you need to find out that multiplication factor where you get the same base with like power 2. So what will be like for 125? Like if you start dividing it with 5, you get like 2 10 to 5 25, you get 5, 5. So it's basically 125 is basically 5 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 5, right? So you actually you have three fives here, if I am right. Am I right? Let me just check. Yes, of course I am right. So you are left with three fives, so you can simply write it like this: 5 square, because you have a half on top of it, so you need to get rid of this half, right? So you can just write it like this: 5 square into 5 half. So what you will left with, you're left with 1 5 and then this square root 5. That's it. So this is the square root of 125. So yep, it's the let's we have done it. We have seen the method of doing root calculations manually. So in my next video, I'll try to explain how to calculate roots of whole numbers, like with numbers which doesn't have, like for example, like whole numbers like 2 or 3 or 5. Like these numbers, they don't have any multiplication factor apart from these numbers itself. So yeah, hopefully you'll see my next video. Till then, thank you, take care, see you soon.